right, welcome folks. Mil-Spec Ops Monkey here. It's going to be your SITREP. It is the 4th of July, so happy Independence Day, everyone. It's 11 a.m. Central Time coming to you from the future Republic of Texas. And so without further ado, let's hop on over to our board. We're going to kick it off in Skyglass. By the way, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and bell for notification. Also, don't forget, today is the last day for our sale. There is a 4th of July sale for Werx merch, and Skyglass is also having a flash sale over on his site. So remember, if you want to follow me on this app or get this app for yourself, it is quick and easy. Just go over there to AVR Labs and or just Google Skyglass Flight app, and it'll pull it right up. And you can do all the same stuff that I'm doing. And so without further ado, we are on Skyglass app today. You can see it is a very slow morning. We kind of expected that. It is the 4th of July. So we'll cover a little bit of news, and then we'll get into the stuff. There are some surprises in here. And then I'm going to touch on something that Canadian Prepper was talking on the other day, looking at one of the flight apps, and I'm going to try and provide some clarity as to why we're seeing what we're seeing. And so, all right. So without that, let's see, going to hang up on me for a second. Sorry, I've got refresh on, and it's actually going to mess with me. I need to turn it off before it starts to think again. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to turn that little button off for refresh, and then I'm going to come back to it just so we can show you what we've got going on here. But if we get over to the watch list, you can see pretty light morning. We do have an R135 doing, and of course the German balloons, the Mil-Intel balloons, watching everybody's move in Europe. I can tell you those things got some pretty extensive reach. There's that R135 over the Black Sea, and then we'll get over to continental United States, and we've got that Zulu flight. We're going to look at that a little closer. That is a drone, folks. It's been doing a lot of work down there in Yuma in the proving grounds. We just saw it bug out and head over to Belize, and then those are military intelligence balloons, and then a Border Patrol, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol flight up. So not much in terms of the watch list. Now, if we look at what is up in its entirety today, sitting at about 100 aircraft up right now. These are all Mil aircraft, by the way. But notice we've got the high flyers up here. These are going to be your Mil-Intel balloons. Those are sitting anywhere from 80 to 90,000 feet up. This Zulu right here is one we've been talking about. It actually flew down to Belize, or right there in that general area, did a bunch of recon, and then came back. It makes pretty good coverage, so it's definitely not a balloon, and it's a drone of some sort, but it's not a Q4 or a Q9 drone that we're normally looking at. Also notice these C numbers that are called out, C6604, you'll see a couple more here, C6539, etc. Those are just going to be H60s or Coast Guard H60s. That call sign, anytime you see that C designator on the front of that, it's usually going to be the Coast Guard. Okay, so you can see they've got quite a bit up right now. The CNV, that's going to be a Navy logistics bird. And then if we get up here on the East Coast, you can see just this is where most of the busyness is. But very light. Again, like I said, we expected that really. If you look at the heavy lifts for today, you can see we've got some aircraft coming inbound from across the drink, all up there in the northeast kind of side of the house. And really not too much to speak of. Now, Europe is busy. We expect that to happen. You can see they're fairly busy. Not as busy as they usually are, probably because the U.S. is doing a lot of the heavy lifting over there. It's kind of a good indicator when we're looking at this to just, you know, break it down to show you who's really doing all the movements, right? So this stuff that you see up, there's a couple Reach aircraft, but most of those are going to be other foreign militaries, right? There's your two Reach there and one a little further north up there near the Baltic region. But yeah, it's kind of quiet, like I said. And if you get over to refuelers, it is really quiet. I got one refueler up right now over the U.S. Call sign 0. You can see him running that little Marshall pattern there. That is supporting fighters up over Flashbang. Of course, he's at Camp David, and he is off doing some other stuff today. But over Europe, only 2 air refuelers up. That one that's servicing kind of off that toe of Italy, and then that one that's just kind of tightening in. It means we've got fighters up over Constanta, of course, the one port we seem to be protecting for some crazy reason, right? So, okay. Back over here to our board, and let's get into the mix of things as we look at Flashbang's schedule today. As you can see, he's doing a little barbecuing and then doing some fireworks. So what most Americans do on this day. So nothing really to see here. All right. Bug on over here. Now this is something. Just we're going to go through a couple news articles, and I'm going to show you some data that kind of supports it and what we're seeing. U.S. court ruling may take 70,000 truckers off the road. This is the kind of stuff you just can't make it up. We continue to just shoot ourselves in the foot over and over and over. And if it's not this, it's going to be the weather coming through, drought, anything that impacts our food and our ability to supply food seems to be compromised, whether it's a plant fire, trucks being taken offline, or a derail from a train with fertilizer on it. It's just insane. You really can't make this stuff up, and it's so obvious what they're doing to us. Okay. Now, speaking of obvious, here's one for you. Understanding the economic crisis of Sri Lanka. This is actually Zero Hedge. Just a couple things I want to point out. One, they're saying one of the main causes of this crisis is their significant reliance on imports. Of course, you know it is an island, so they've got a lot of reliance there with India and China. And the fact that China is not shipping anything out right now, and they don't have any credit to buy anything anyway, but it's just, a slow death, so to speak. Again, 22.4 million people on this island, and they are out of fuel, out of food, out of medicine, out of a lot of different things. And so they are now starting to descend into total chaos, and it's not good, really, as you watch this. But notice here, too, they're talking about how people are actually standing in line entire day just to get fuel and food. And, of course, this right here, the number one thing, social unrest. This is what happens when you start squeezing people on food. People get mad, they get angry, and they get stupid. And so anyway, that's kind of what's going on there with Sri Lanka. We'll continue to look at that here in a second, too, from a ship perspective. And then here's another very good key indicator and something we need to pay attention to. Now, I mentioned that Amazon had already was in the process of shutting down 10 million square foot of warehouse space across the United States because they don't have the inventories coming in to support it. That's because they get all the stuff from China. All right. And so if you look at this, now they're planning for 16 warehouses now to actually cancel or delay. And that's just another leading indicator that we are in for a heck of a ride, because these guys provide most of the stuff out there these days, right? And so when they start to shrink their footprint, you know that that is a pretty good sign that inventory levels are starting to deplete, okay? All right, now let's talk ship tracking for a second. I'm going to bounce this over here. We're going to look at Shanghai. Some of the things I want to show you, we were looking at the boats that were parked the other day, the unspecified ships. Not seeing them anymore. I don't know what happened to them, if they all just got sucked back into service. What the deal is, we do have them out over this area, kind of along that equator line. But that's about it. I mean, you get into where we saw them before, and they're not there. So let's turn on our cargo and our tankers. And you can see, I just want to show you, first off, the general flow of things. Notice 99.9% of that stuff is flowing into China. You can see it kind of arch across the Pacific, but it's going right past the United States. It's going right into the Panama Canal and down into South America. It looks like they are supporting big time in and out of South America. As you can see now, of course, we know that the Chinese have a big Silk Road thing going on with Central America, and so they may be, maybe why they're getting all the supplies and goods and nobody else is. So notice here, this is Los Angeles and Long Beach, mainly oil tankers sitting out there. The other stuff is not moving very quickly. There are a handful of boats from Hong Kong. That's about it. Now, if we look off the coast of Shanghai, check this out. Still stacked, racked and stacked, actually. Boats waiting to get in and out. Doesn't matter. They're not coming to us. They're going internally to China, right? So kind of a pretty good indicator that if you think we were waiting for 2 months, it's gone way beyond that. We're at about a 5-month range. Now, there are some boats parked out there on the south end, look to be either cargo or shipping vessel or fishing vessels. But here's the port. Notice there is some more, we haven't seen that in the past, oil tankers in the port. That's a good sign. It means they're somebody's giving fuel to Sri Lanka. Don't know how they're paying for it, but they're bringing them some fuel, so that's kind of a good sign. And then this just unrelenting flow of goods across the Black Sea for Russia, coming in and out of that pinch point in Istanbul. And this is an area they're just parking boats. You can see lots of them. Those aren't just shipping cargo, but they're smaller cargo vessels. And then Constanta, busy as always. Now, notice too, as we get up here near Odessa, things like that, we can see the ships in the port, but notice it is just still very, very blank out there. That's because of the mines that they laid in the general region. And so it keeps people from flowing in and out. They're basically stuck up in those Odessa ports. Now over to Kaliningrad, you're going to notice a couple boats in there. We're seeing some Ruskies, should I say. Russian. There's one, another Russian. And there's a Russian oil tanker. And then that. So for the most part, Kaliningrad is occupied by the Ruskies. So again, that's just a data point. Pay attention to it because that will come in handy in the future. This is a spot that they're starting to really squabble over, and I think this could be the pinch point that actually creates that animosity or something along with Lithuania and the other folks in the region there, because remember the rail runs straight into Belarus and into Russia from Kaliningrad. That's one of their major ports. So having them sanctioned or put a blockade in here is definitely going to cause something to happen. No doubt about that. So, all right. Now we're to flight radar. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about Canadian Prepper. He had somebody send him this actual map right here, and they were talking about how something didn't seem right, the fact that all of this airspace is cleared around Ukraine and Belarus, etc. It has been that way, folks, for a long time. Since before the war kicked off, they started to kind of designate that airspace. Now, if we get in a little bit, I'll show you. Most of these, if they're flying into Russia or they're flying anywhere north, they completely avoid this area. There's a reason for that. If you look at, let's kind of bounce into this. I'll just show you the box that's over that general region, and you will see it is very, very much so boxed off. Like, that's a NOTAM, right? That is why there's no flying in that area. Matter of fact, this was due to expire. Looks like it has now. It's going till July 5th, and they'll probably reactivate it. But it started June 29th. They just keep extending it and adding things to it. This is not uncommon for them to renew it. But there'll be no flights in this area because this right here. UK has sent armored missile launchers into the area. Okay, that's the first piece of it. And then the U.S. has done the same thing. And so it's not just the shoulder-fired, but you also have ground ones as well. And then, of course, you can see this one here. This is where U.S. to send Ukraine advanced surface-to-air missile systems. They've got them in the region, and that's kind of the key takeaway. Now, if you look at this general area, let me get over to the war map. You will see, as we get into this, that right there is a surface-to-air missile that took out a drone that was over the area. But it just goes to show you, this is that spot, as you can see, where they've kind of designated things off. And then you've got all of this turmoil right here, right on the border. But this is going to be Crimea. That's Russia for the most part, and has been for a while, right? And so, of course, Russia's got everything up here in Belarus. And then this is their active campaign as they tighten the screws on Kiev. But this will give you kind of a lowdown what's going on in the region. Very active, actually. But when you have that, the reason for it is because of this. You may remember MH17 that got shot down over Ukraine. That was an aircraft that was actually flying in the region. The Ukrainians tried to blame it on the Russians. The Russians blamed the Ukrainians. They said it was separatist, whatever it may be. But nonetheless, this is why they avoid that area. They don't want a civilian aircraft getting shot down right now. So they put them out, clear of the region. Like, this is why it's kind of a bubble over that area. And that's why, because you have surface-to-air missiles and shoulder-fired missiles and everything else on ground. And if an aircraft were to fly into that area, it's probably going to get lit up pretty quickly. So nothing really new that I see. This is what we've been continuing to watch for quite some time. So anyway, so we'll move on. But that's why this area has got the bubble over it, okay? All right, over to the cyber map. It looks like the U.S. is getting peppered today, more so than it has in the past. As you can see, it is pretty active today. So those are going to be attacks, whether they're knocking things off grid, bots, all kinds of different things, all right? So, and again, this is one that we watch. We know we're going to get peppered probably as part of a war effort, all right? Now, speaking of 4th of July, here's one for you. Check this out. This is this is actually Newsweek just released. That is a weapons depot, a Russian weapons depot that was hit by Ukrainian missile, which was probably a U.S. or a UK missile, not a Ukrainian missile, because they don't really have their own stuff. We're giving them everything to fight that war. But that was a kill shot right there. Massive explosion. Almost reminds you a little bit of what took place in Beirut with that giant explosion on site there. All right, over to our military side of the house. Let's look at Ramstein. Biggs Army Airfield is pretty much empty today. Not a lot going on U.S.-wise, domestically, because, again, it's the 4th of July, so not a lot of flights. But we get over here to Ramstein. You can see we've got a 747-400 coming inbound from Baltimore, Washington, and then, of course, it looks like that's headed back out. That's an Atlas Air, and other than that, not too much. One reach flight coming in and out. We get over to this side, the camber flights. Now, this is a surprise to me. I will tell you, I wasn't expecting this, even though right now we show 5. An hour ago, we had 9 flights on the board that were camber. Now, those camber flights, those are troop movements, okay? That is, well, that would indicate that our soldiers have gotten marching orders pretty quickly. I figured it would take about a week to 2 before we started to see that big uptick as they start to get that number from 100,000 in Europe to 300,000. That's a lot of flights, but it looks like they wasted no time in sending troops in. So here we are. We've got 5 flights right now, and we just had 4 drop off the board. So that's 9 flights. That's the highest I've ever seen from a camber perspective ever in terms of watching it, okay? All right, Ruski's got 1 bird up. It looks like that one's coming out of Kosovo and probably headed, if I had to guess, to Moscow. But that is the only Ruski flight on the board today. Again, we don't see them very often. And then the Omni flights, got 3 on the showing right now in air. Looks like they're landing in Anchorage, Ellsworth Air Force Base, and Washington Dulles. The one from Washington's coming out of Topeka, Kansas, headed inbound to that direction. That could be some troop beef up for today, given that it's the 4th of July. Maybe having some boots on the ground in the general region. But this one's coming out of Asia Pacific. All right. Now, this is going to be the Brits and their UK troop movements. As you can see, you got 6 flights on the board right now. Never does it show the destination. That's how you know it's troops. Even though we can click on it and watch it and follow it to its end point, we typically don't do that. We just kind of know in general where the bases are that troops are going. That's nothing that's being disclosed that somebody else doesn't already know. Again, it's all open source, and believe me, if we can look at it, the Russians and everybody else have been looking at it in China for quite some time. So, all right. Now, here's some of your reach birds. You can see these are C-17s. This one looks to be just getting airborne at 28,300 feet, climbing out 500 miles an hour. Looks to be headed up here to Newfoundland and then probably across the drink. And then this one is coming out of Turkey, headed into Europe. Again, C-17s, that's probably moving heavy equipment and assets. The troops, they seem to be utilizing the military assets, heavy lifts, for moving equipment and things of that nature, and then they're utilizing the commercial flights or the chartered flights for troops. Okay, here we are. This is going to be your Swift Airs. Now, this is pretty light. Normally, we get into the Swift Air. Remember, this is the immigration machine. Normally, when we get in here, it is pretty packed. The fact that it is not, and the fact that it's 4th of July, goes to show you who they are servicing, which would be probably federal. The fact, too, that they are all border locations look to be bugging out a little bit of a concern. San Diego to Cincinnati, Miami down to Bogota, Colombia, and then, of course, Phoenix to Laredo. Again, that's border town to border town, or Phoenix isn't really border town, but Laredo is. El Paso to Alexandria, 72-hour holding facility, and then this one down here headed up to Miami. But again, just a good indicator. When you see it light on days where our military is light, shows you who the customer is, right, and who's really on these flights and being moved. It's not military, folks. It just means that Customs and Border Patrol are controlling these flights because they are federal, right? Okay, lastly up here, this is going to be just your NASA birds. So just to show you, we do track these from time to time. Now, I don't have these loaded in my Skyglass. This is just their Airborne Science NASA.gov site. But these are the guys that are either doing surveillance or manipulating the weather, all right? Now, we get over here. I'm just going to point one more out because this one did get my attention. We were looking at it the other day. And it's worth noting because when you look at the NASA flights and you think, weather manipulation, here's a little confirmation for you. This is an exercise started May 25th to August 26th, weather modification technology flights. So there's your proof right there. They are definitely out modifying weather. We knew that, but it's not often you see, something that confirms it in a NOTAM. So now we just got to find them here across the U.S. I'm sure they're in here, but there's a lot of them. If you get really drilled in or drill down, you can start to see these other little boxes pop up that have some pretty interesting data point at time. Like this one is for aerial surveillance or drones over that Dallas area. Same thing down here. You get just different stuff around your border towns. That's where it gets kind of interesting. But the only TFR that I see right now that is coming up is Flashbang looks to be headed into this general area. I think that is Cleveland. And that's July 6th. So that's 2 days from now. Again, he's up here in Camp David. That's your active TFR. Notice that the big major stuff that was off the coast here ended July 1. So that TFR or NOTAM has gone away. But all of these, for the most part, that you see on here right now are either some type of military exercise or operation and ongoing, okay? All right, well, listen, that's going to be it for today. I knew this was going to be a little shorter than usual just because of the fact that there's just not a lot of stuff over the United States. But we'll continue to pay attention to it. The fact that we've got a pretty significant uptick relative to camber flights, which are troop movements, right out of the gate on a holiday is a pretty good indication we're going to see a pretty significant uptick in the coming weeks. So we'll continue to watch that. All right, well, listen, that's going to be it for today. You guys be safe out there. Keep that powder dry and stay frosty. God bless. Monkey out.